Beautiful. Hey, I wanted to just run a short workshop this morning about how to use Cutco to network yourself into your chosen major or career field. Now, I'm a big believer, and I'm really only going to cover 2 points today, but I'm a big believer that the first step to getting what you want is asking what you want. Okay. I see lots of people where they just, for whatever reason, they get shy or nervous to ask. And I genuinely think that the biggest reason people don't ask is that they're afraid of rejection, right? They're afraid of the no, they're afraid of what people will say or think. And that is a normal thing to feel. Ah, we talked about it a little bit yesterday for those of you that were in the workshop yesterday, but there's a part of the brain that handles the fight or flight mechanism. And that mechanism back in the day, it was, do I kill this thing or do I run away so it doesn't kill me? And those were like very black and white, clear choices that people had to make back in the day. But we just genuinely, in modern society, there aren't that many occasions where running away and killing something are the only available options. So that mechanism in the brain has adapted itself to handle rejection as well. So it's a normal human response for the heart to race a little bit, for there to be adrenaline, for there to be sweat, for all those responses. It's normal and human. But what we have to realize is that we're afraid of a shadow. Okay, the honest truth is if saber-toothed tigers, if we were against one of those, yeah, it would kill us, right? But if you're considering just asking someone on a date, there is zero risk of death. If you're considering at a dancing and not being a wallflower, there is zero risk of death. What's funny is they've done research on skydivers where there actually is a not zero risk of death. And what they found is that they feel the most fear right before they jump. So it's when we're thinking about doing the thing that scares us, asking the person out, going dancing with Cutco, calling that person who's not a guaranteed yes, what I'm about to talk about, asking for what you want. Whenever we have a possibility of failure, the skydivers, what they found is that their heart rate spikes up. They get, I forget the two chemicals names, but there's one, cortisol. I forget if that's the one that handles stress. Either way, there's a chemical in our body that stresses us out, and it makes the heart race and the body sweat and all those things. And then there's a different chemical in the body that eliminates stress and gives us pleasure that I think is not, I don't remember. Either way, I'm going back to a TED Talk I watched a while back now. But what they found is with skydivers, right before they jump, that's when they're freaking out and in panic mode. A weird thing about the way the brain and the body functions, though, is that as soon as the skydiver jumps, their brain just kind of looks at it like, well, we're in it now, so we may as well enjoy it. And it just eliminates, it flushes out the stress hormone and it pumps in the happy hormone. And it's a self-preservation thing that the body has. But if you ever watch the video of someone skydiving, right, they're freaking out all the time from like the time they're getting in the airplane, the plane's going up, they're getting increasingly freaked out because their brain is saying, literally, don't do this. And then they do it, and they're like, oh, yeah. And then they start just, and they're laughing. And it's because of the way that functions. So the main thing to realize is very simply that everything you're feeling when you're considering asking is normal and human. But if you don't ask, you get the same exact result as if you did ask and got a no, right? So you're essentially, if you don't ask, you're giving yourself a no. And just knowing that once you get past the ask, when you get to the point where like, hey, there's no undoing this now, your brain is going to flood with happy hormones. You just got to get past the ask. You have to do that while you're feeling the fear, right? So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about, is just understanding the physiology between being scared of this stuff. The second thing is I want to talk about specifically tactics and skills to use Cutco to get what you want. So, first thing I mentioned at the very beginning is you can get whatever you want. So, the step number one is simply know what you want. Okay. And this has been different things for me at different times of my career. There have been times when I really wanted daytime appointments. I was finding it very easy to get appointments that were 5, 6, 7 p.m., but I was finding it hard to fill up my 9 a.m., my 10:30, my 12 o'clock appointment. And so my manager just told me, he was like, dude, ask for it when you ask for referrals. Okay, so then I started doing that. I would start asking for referrals, and I would say, and I would, by the way, part of the key, you need to ask for referrals like normal. The goal isn't to not get the ones you were getting before and get these instead. The goal is to get all the ones I was getting and also some targeted ones. Okay. But if you want more daytime appointments, you ask for referrals the same way you normally would. And then you ask for, hey, who do you know who stays at home during the daytime, right? Another one that I found is getting into rich neighborhoods. Okay, I used to make the excuse for myself that, oh, I'm not from a rich town and I'm not a rich person, so I don't really know those people, and they're the other half. And then I just realized, like, why don't I just start asking for what I want? So what I did is I identified a couple of neighborhoods that I'd really like to get into. And as I saw the people I was seeing, I just started asking, who do you know who lives over in that neighborhood? And it was really funny because I started getting people who did. And then once I got a couple of those appointments, I became a fixture in the neighborhood. Okay, you can do this with pretty much anything. One thing, just a random quirk, my wife is allergic to every animal that exists. And so we'll never have a pet ever. So I sometimes ask my customers, hey, who do you know who's got a dog or a cat? So I can go to their house and pet their dog. Uh, and I did that genuinely because I wanted to be able to pet animals while I was doing my appointments. And that was a thing that I do religiously. Uh, but anyway, in terms of your chosen network or career, this is all connected, by the way. Just ask for introductions. That's it. Okay. So if you know, hey, I want to be an engineer, great. When you're doing your appointments, get your referrals like normal. Again, the goal isn't to get referrals to 10 engineers and 0 non engineers. The goal is to get the 10 referrals you were already going to get and a couple engineers. But just work it in. After you do your referral approach, just like normal, I would also recommend asking for daytime appointments or pets or the rich neighborhood or whatever else you want to. And just make one of your questions. Hey, I really want to be an engineer. Who do you know that I should meet to be able to talk to them about that? Right? Hey, I know I want to open up my own business and be an entrepreneur one day. Who do you know that I should meet and talk to about that? Hey, I really want to be a scientist one day. Who do you know that I should meet? And what's awesome, and you'll find some people, they're like, I don't know any engineers, I'm sorry. Right? And that's okay. Some people will. Some people will. And what's awesome, and you'll get to this place, it doesn't take very long when you start to develop the skills of being a good Cutco rep and you start to develop the network that is a professional network. You don't not still have your student, friend, associate network, but you also start to build a whole new network of professionals, right? And many of them in a chosen career that you want to be in. It's not uncommon for Cutco reps to start trying to get recruited by their customers, right? Where your customers like, hey, you're a really good presenter, you're networking, you're doing all these things. I have a job for you. And then what's really cool is when you get good at selling Cutco, you start evaluating their job offers, and you're like, yeah, right. But I had one guy, Cecil Cummins. He was my number one rep a couple summers ago from Annapolis High School, actually. And he got 47 job offers in one summer. which is awesome. And what's also really awesome is he ended up turning all of them down and opening up a branch office with Cutco the next summer, and then he left us. But when he left us, he wasn't just taking the next shiny object. He started a real estate club, which was always a passion for him. Got into doing his own stuff with real estate, and Gary Vaynerchuk was one of his mentors and people who really looked up to. And he ended up working directly for Gary Vaynerchuk, and not like someone who Gary Vaynerchuk's over here and Cecil's here. Like he travels with Gary Vaynerchuk on the plane, right? And he's got that proximity, which is awesome, right? But that's the place you want to put yourself in. Is unlike the typical college student where they're just hopeful to get whatever job they can get. Like you can really 1, maybe 2 summers, and you can completely upgrade everything, which is why I love this place so much. But anyway, that is everything that I wanted to share there. I'm gonna end the YouTube stream. Like, subscribe, all the stuff. I appreciate you. End stream.